imagine the sheer, just heart-dropping terror of losing a child.
Oh, it's unimaginable.
Right. And I don't mean the fleeting panic of losing sight of them in a crowded grocery store.
Right, where you can just, lock the doors and call security.
Exactly. I'm talking about losing a child in a 265,000-acre expanse of jagged rock, thin air, and rushing water.
Which is a completely different level of nightmare.
It really is. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we are looking at a historical missing persons case so baffling and, frankly, so relentlessly contradictory that it forced 200 men to try and physically fight a mountain.
Literally fight the geography of the mountain. It's wild.
Yeah, we are heading into the sprawling, unforgiving wilderness of the Continental Divide. Our mission today is to examine a mystery that really defies geography, logic, and time.
It's basically the ultimate open-air vanishing act.
That's a great way to put it.
And what makes this deep dive so compelling is how it exposes the fragility of our human assumptions. When we step into a pristine national park, we bring our neighborhood expectations of safety right along with us.
We think we're safe because there's a ranger station nearby.
Exactly. But this case forces us to look at the psychological breakdown that happens when that illusion of safety is shattered by the sheer indifferent scale of nature.
Well said. So I want to pull you, the listener, right into the scene. Because the contrast between the setting and the nightmare that unfolds is just stark.
It's a very peaceful setup initially.
Right. It's the Independence Day weekend, July 3rd, 1938. The Beilhartz family is taking a trip away from their home down in Denver.
And this is a big family, right?
Oh, massive by today's standards. William and his wife have 10 children.
Wow, 10 kids.
Yeah, 10. And they're heading up into the beautiful Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado for a multi-day camping trip.
So to truly grasp what happens next, we kind of have to contextualize the landscape they were stepping into.
Please do, because it's not just a casual campground.
No, not at all. President Woodrow Wilson established Rocky Mountain National Park back in 1915 to protect this majestic area. But protected does not mean tamed.
Right. It's still a wilderness.
Very much so. The eastern and western slopes of the Continental Divide run directly through the center of it. And this isn't just a line on a map. It is a geological knife edge.
So it's incredibly rugged.
Incredibly. The specific campsite the Beilhartz family chose was roughly a quarter-mile west of the Fall River Lodge.
Yeah.
It's situated precisely where the Roaring and Fall Rivers meet, sitting just below Horseshoe Falls.
I mean, on a sunny July weekend, the sound of the water and the shade of the pines, it sounds idyllic.
It sounds perfect. But the terrain of the Continental Divide is lethal.
How so?
Well, the altitude thins out the oxygen, for one. The weather can drop from sweltering to freezing in minutes, and the topography is defined by sheer drops and really dense, disorienting timber.
Which brings us to the timeline of Sunday morning, July 3rd. The window of time we're dealing with here is razor thin. The family is waking up around the campsite.
Just doing normal morning stuff.
Exactly. William, the father, and his 4-year-old son, Alfred Edwin Beilhartz, walk over to the nearby stream to wash their faces and hands.
Keep in mind, Alfred is only 4.
Right, he's just a toddler, basically. Now, just 500 feet upstream from them, 2 family friends who are on the trip, Orrin Bronson and Walter Hansen, are doing the exact same thing.
500 feet in a dense pine forest alongside a rushing river is a critical distance.
It sounds close, though. Like 500 feet isn't that far.
It isn't in a city, but out there, visuals are completely obstructed by timber, and the auditory environment is entirely dominated by the roar of the water.
Right. The Roaring River definitely lives up to its name.
Exactly. You can't see much, and you definitely can't hear anything over the water.
So William and little Alfred finish washing up. William turns and walks back to the main camp to help with breakfast.
Leaving Alfred for just a second.
Yeah. Alfred, acting like any curious 4-year-old, decides he wants to go see the family friends. So he starts walking upstream along the bank to join Orrin and Walter.
And this is where the grocery store analogy really hits home.
Oh, totally. If you have ever been responsible for a toddler, you know this feeling.
Yeah.
You turn down the cereal aisle, turn back, and you get that massive spike of adrenaline when you realize they wandered off.
But you usually assume they're just one aisle over.
Exactly. You assume they're close. But here, that split-second miscommunication is magnified by the overwhelming hostility of the Colorado wilderness.
The psychology of the immediate aftermath here is really fascinating.
Yeah, walk us through that, because they don't panic right away, right?
Right, they don't. Orrin and Walter eventually finish their morning routine and walk back into the main camp.
Without Alfred.
without Alfred. But the group doesn't instantly panic. I mean, there are over a dozen people at this campsite.
So they assume someone else has him.
Sort of. The logical assumption they made was based on, like, urban human geometry. He's 4 years old, his legs are short. He couldn't have covered more than a few dozen yards in 5 or 10 minutes.
That makes sense.
They naturally assume that if a dozen adults and older siblings fan out and start shouting his name, the acoustic problem will be solved.
Like he'll hear them and just walk toward the sound of his family.
Exactly.
Except he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
They scour the immediate brush, they shout until their throats are literally raw, and they are met with absolute silence.
Or, well, more accurately, the ceaseless noise of the river masking whatever just happened.
Yeah, no Alfred. The assumption of safety just evaporates.
You see, a 4-year-old taking a wrong turn in a dense mixed pine forest, stepping over fallen logs, and navigating uneven, rocky soil, they can vanish from human sightlines in seconds.
It's terrifying how fast it happens.
And once disorientation sets in, a child's instinct isn't always to stay put.
Wait, really? They don't just sit down and cry.
Not always. Often, they keep walking in an attempt to self-correct, which means they end up walking further and further away from the search radius.
Man. So the family's realization that he is genuinely gone triggers a response that is staggering in its scale.
It's huge.
They alert Ranger Muma at the Fall River Ranger Station, and Muma doesn't just send out a few guys with flashlights.
No, he calls in the big guns.
He calls in the Civilian Conservation Corps. For context, if you don't know, the CCC was Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal work relief program.
These were legions of young, tough, Depression-era men doing heavy manual labor in the parks.
And within exactly 45 minutes of Muma's call, there are over 100 CCC members on the ground at the campsite, tearing into the tree line.
Mobilizing 100 laborers into the deep brush in under an hour is a phenomenal logistical feat for 1938.
It's basically an army.
It really is. By Monday, July 4th, the operation swells even more. You have the CCC, civilian volunteers pouring in, and the Rangers even requisition bloodhounds from the Colorado State Penitentiary.
They are completely saturating the environment.
Yes.
But I found the river search to be the most unbelievable part of the source material.
The lengths they went to.
It's crazy. The Rangers operate on the immediate assumption that Alfred fell into the roaring river.
Which is a logical first thought.
Sure, but they don't just walk the banks looking for footprints. By Tuesday, July 5th, they decide to physically dam and divert the river.
They literally try to move the river.
They build a dam using sandbags, heavy rocks, and felled logs. They drag the riverbed with iron grappling hooks and pikes.
It's just a massive undertaking.
They even erect a heavy wire net downstream near Fall River to catch anything that might wash down.
You are watching human beings attempt to fight the very geography of the Earth.
It's man versus nature in the most literal sense.
Diverting a mountain river fed by snowmelt is brutal, freezing, exhausting manual labor.
I have to ask you, though, why take that specific monumental step?
It does seem extreme.
Right. Why were the Rangers so absolutely convinced he was in the water that they committed hundreds of man-hours to damming a literal river based on a hunch?
It's a fair question.
It just seems like a massive misallocation of resources when a child could be wandering freezing in the woods.
To understand the Rangers' singular focus on the water, you have to understand the specific kinetic energy of the roaring river.
Okay, lay it out for us.
It is not a gentle, meandering creek. We can actually look forward in history to the 1982 Lawn Lake flood to illustrate this.
What happened then?
In that event, an earthen dam failed and sent a wall of water 25 to 30 feet high rushing down this exact same roaring river valley.
Good Lord, 25 feet.
Yeah, over 300 million gallons of water. It killed 3 campers. The channel itself is incredibly steep and fast-moving.
So it's incredibly dangerous.
Exactly. Water that cold and that fast acts like an industrial blender.
Wow, an industrial blender.
Yeah. So to experienced park rangers, the proximity of a clumsy 4-year-old to that kind of hydraulic power meant only one statistically probable outcome.
That he slipped.
Right. The child slips, hits his head on a slick stone, and the current just takes him.
But that logic holds up right until Wednesday, July 6th, when the river theory completely collapses.
It falls apart, totally.
They abandon the water search entirely. Why?
Because the mechanics of the river ultimately proved he wasn't in there.
How so?
If Alfred had fallen in and drowned, his body simply could not have bypassed the natural and man-made filters.
Beaver dams, right.
Yes, there were 5 separate densely woven beaver dams between the spot where he vanished and the Fall River confluence.
And nothing got through them.
Nothing. Then there was the wire net the public service workers erected. Grappling hooks pulled up absolutely nothing.
Okay, but what about the tracking dogs? Because I read they were a total bust, too.
Yeah, the dogs failed completely.
The penitentiary bloodhounds lost the scent at the river's edge, and another set of dogs picked up a scent much higher in elevation from the camp, but it just led to a dead end.
The failure of the dogs actually comes down to alpine environmental science.
Oh, explain that.
Well, scent tracking relies on detecting shed human skin cells. They're called rafts.
For rafts, okay.
Yeah, these rafts fall to the ground and generate a bacterial footprint. But rushing, icy water halts bacterial action and washes those rafts away entirely.
So the riverbank was basically wiped clean.
Exactly. And in the higher elevations, the thin air, freezing ground temperatures, and unpredictable thermal updrafts literally lift the scent particles into the wind.
Oh, wow. So the scent is just blowing away.
Scattering them across miles of rock, the dogs had absolutely nothing reliable to follow.
So by Thursday, the searchers and the family are talking to reporters, and the cognitive dissonance is peaking.
Because nothing is making sense.
Right. The river yielded nothing. The woods yielded nothing. And human psychology demands an explanation when the physical evidence runs dry.
We need a narrative.
The family becomes convinced he is either lost incredibly deep in the forest or he was taken.
And when the water is ruled out, the investigation is forced to look up into the wider, stranger possibilities of the park.
Which opens the door to narratives that seem to defy physical reality.
Yes, the weird stuff.
Which brings us to the Devil's Nest anomaly.
This is where it gets really bizarre.
If you've ever hiked at serious elevation, you will appreciate how physically impossible this next clue is.
It really is.
Let's rewind the timeline back to the actual day Alfred vanished. Sunday, July 3rd, around 1 p.m.
So just hours after he went missing.
Right. A couple from Denver, William J. Eels and his wife, are resting on a hike up the old Fall River Road.
Taking a break.
Yeah, they happen to look up toward Mount Chapin, and they see a young boy sitting on a rock in a notorious section of the mountainside known as the Devil's Nest.
And the Devil's Nest is a notoriously inaccessible, jagged, rocky outcrop.
That is putting it mildly. The Devil's Nest is 6 miles west of the campsite.
6 miles.
6 miles.
Yeah.
We are talking about a 4-year-old boy in street shoes navigating a steep uphill climb over loose scree fields and vertical drops in a matter of hours.
It's an intense climb for an adult.
A child that age would shred their hands and knees just trying to scramble up a fraction of that distance. I really struggle to accept that this sighting have any validity whatsoever.
Well, the park rangers shared your exact skepticism.
As they should.
The logistics are completely absurd, but the Eels sighting was not just a fleeting glance at a distant shadow.
What did they say they saw?
The details they provided to the authorities were highly specific and deeply unsettling.
Okay, unsettling how?
They reported hearing the child make a, quote, shrill noise.
Like a scream?
Baby. They watched as the boy looked over the ledge down at them. And then comes the crucial detail.
What's that?
He either retreated back from the edge or he was physically pulled from view.
Pulled.
Yes.
Pulled. See, the word pulled changes the entire paradigm. That implies a second party was up there on that impossible ridge with him.
Exactly. This forces an analysis of what the eels actually witnessed.
Could it have been an animal?
That's what people wondered. Were they experiencing an optical illusion, perhaps seeing a marmot or a mountain sheep, and their brains filled in the shape of a boy?
It's possible. Pareidolia is a real thing.
But they were so disturbed by what they saw that they physically hiked up to the boulder where the figure was perched.
Did they find anything?
They found no footprints, no torn fabric, nothing. They went back to their car, heard the radio bulletin about the missing Beilhartz boy, and later matched the child on the ledge to Alfred's photograph in the Denver newspapers.
That is chilling.
They were so adamant about what they saw that rangers ended up dispatching 150 men to swarm the Devil's Nest.
150 men climbing up to this inaccessible outcrop, risking their own lives.
And they come back completely empty-handed.
Nothing up there. But for the Beilhartz family, who were absolutely certain Alfred wouldn't just wander 6 miles uphill, the idea that he was pulled back from the ledge was the proof they needed.
It validated their fears.
They were convinced he was abducted.
And as the days dragged on, the investigation started finding fragmented clues that seemed to support that darker theory.
Shifting the threat from the harshness of the mountain to the malice of a kidnapper.
Right. So on July 8th, the FBI actually gets involved.
The FBI?
Yeah. They announced they are running forensic tests on a soiled bandage that was discovered in an abandoned cabin inside the park limits.
This was a total bombshell because Alfred had a blister on his foot the day he vanished.
Exactly.
His mother had treated it that morning, bandaging it, using a very similar material to the one found in the hidden cabin.
Now, you have to view this through the lens of 1938 forensics.
Right, they couldn't just run DNA.
They didn't have DNA testing at all. At best, they could test for blood type. But if you are the desperate parents, a bandage in a hidden cabin is the exact kind of physical breadcrumb that cements your worst feels.
Because it suggests a timeline of movement.
It suggests a human hand took him there and held him there.
And the abduction map gets even more chaotic.
It really spreads out.
On the exact same day Alfred vanished, miles and miles away from the park, a woman named Mrs. C.A. Lynch is driving with her husband on a highway between Big Spring and Ogalla, Nebraska.
So we are out of Colorado entirely.
Right. She claims she sees a young boy walking along the dusty highway with a mysterious man.
And she thinks it's Alfred.
Yes. The next day, she sees Alfred's photo in the newspaper and is absolutely adamant that the boy on the highway was Alfred. Her brother-in-law even reports her sighting to a Denver detective, Fred Renovati.
Geographically, this is a mess. The Devil's Nest, high in the alpine tundra, and a flat Nebraska highway completely contradict each other if we assume a linear timeline.
Right. A child cannot be on a mountain ledge at 1 p.m. and walking on a highway states away that same afternoon.
It's physically impossible. But both sightings fuel the psychological need for the abduction narrative to be true.
And that need for an explanation culminates in what I consider the cruelest aspect of this entire deep dive.
It's so heart-wrenching.
We jump forward 5 months. It is November 27th, 1938.
5 months of not knowing.
The Beilhartz family has been living in the agonizing purgatory of ambiguous loss for almost half a year. Then, William Beilhartz receives a ransom note in the mail.
A ransom note?
The demand is $500 to be placed in a can 1 block from their house. And the text of the note is chilling.
What did it say?
It reads, "Sorry for your son. We went west out of money. The boy doesn't take to us. We will return your son within 24 hours.
The boy doesn't take to us. It is a strangely specific, almost domestic phrasing.
It makes my stomach drop.
It implies a failed attempt to integrate the child or frustration on the part of the captors that he won't stop crying for his parents.
Right.
But to understand the gravity of this note, you have to place it in its historical era.
1938.
This is just 6 years after the Lindbergh baby kidnapping captivated the nation. The Great Depression has made $500 the equivalent of almost $11,000 today.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of money.
It was an era where an entire cottage industry of ransom hoaxes emerged, driven by poverty and a complete lack of modern police tracing.
Put yourself in the shoes of a parent reading that, though. To imagine your child out there that he, quote, doesn't take to the strangers who stole him.
The emotional whiplash of hope and terror must have been unbearable.
But by November 29th, just 2 days later, the police declared the note a probable hoax.
They shut it down quick.
They investigated 2 local suspects, but no one was ever named or charged, and the inquiry abruptly ended.
Leaving the family with nothing.
The family is left paralyzed, never knowing if the note was a genuine fumbled opportunity to buy their son back or an incredibly sadistic prank preying on their vulnerability.
It highlights a grim reality of high-profile missing persons cases that still persists to this day.
The media attention attracts opportunists.
Exactly. And the psychological damage inflicted on the family by a hoaxer is identical to the damage inflicted by an actual kidnapper.
So true. So when we lay out all of these sources side by side, we are left with 3 distinct theories for what happened to little Alfred.
Let's hear them.
First, there is the most statistically likely cause in a wilderness environment: drowning. But I struggle with this. Could the searchers have really missed him?
Well, the water theory demands you believe a body bypassed 5 densely packed beaver dams and a wire net without snagging.
Which seems impossible.
However, hydraulic pressure in mountain rivers can be deceptive. A rushing current can easily pin a 40-pound child beneath a submerged logjam or push them deep into the muddy riverbed.
Completely hidden from the grappling hooks.
Right, scraping the surface wouldn't find them.
Then there is the second theory, abduction. Was the Nebraska sighting accurate? Was the ransom note actually real, and the 1930s police simply lacked the tools to catch the extorter?
To accept abduction, you must explain the logistics of moving a struggling, crying 4-year-old child out of a national park that was actively swarming with over 200 searchers.
Within an hour of his disappearance.
Exactly. It requires an almost supernatural level of stealth.
Which leaves the third possibility, foul play.
The darkest option.
Was there a tragic, accidental death within the family dynamics that morning that was immediately covered up by the parents? Or did an unknown human predator, or even an animal like a mountain lion, intercept him at those 500 feet between his father and the family friends?
An animal attack in a dense forest would leave forensic evidence.
Right. Torn clothing, blood, signs of a drag.
And none of that was found. Each theory requires you to aggressively dismiss a significant piece of evidence that supports the others.
We obsess over cases like this because we have a deep, innate desire to impose order on chaos. We want the timeline to make sense.
We want a neat ending.
We demand that A leads to B leads to C. But the terrifying truth of the Continental Divide is that the scale of the Rocky Mountains does not owe us an explanation.
No, it doesn't.
Sometimes the wilderness simply absorbs a life and refuses to give up the pieces.
And if we look at the mechanics of the massive search itself, there's a deeply unsettling irony we have to consider.
What's that?
A thought that really recontextualizes everything we've unpacked today. We have marveled at the sheer scale and speed of the response.
100 civilian Conservation Corps workers on site within 45 minutes.
Bloodhounds dragging their handlers through the brush, 200 civilian volunteers scrambling up the banks, 150 men charging up the scree fields to the Devil's Nest.
An unprecedented mobilization of manpower.
Exactly the kind of response you would pray for.
Right.
But the CCC were not trained forensic trackers with GPS. They were essentially an ad hoc infantry regiment tearing through the woods blind.
Just stomping through the forest.
Right. In their frantic, adrenaline-fueled rush to save a little boy, is it possible that this massive army of well-meaning searchers was actually the worst thing that could have happened?
Wait, you mean they destroyed the evidence before it could be found?
Think about it. In their absolute desperation to locate him quickly, did the heavy boots of hundreds of laborers and panicked volunteers accidentally trample the very footprints, snap the broken twigs, and obliterate the subtle scuff marks that a trained indigenous tracker could have used to follow him?
Oh, man.
Did the overwhelming rescue effort permanently erase the truth of his path?
That entirely reframes the locked room mystery we discussed at the start.
Yeah.
The room wasn't just vast and open.
Yo.
The detectives rushed in and accidentally burned the crime scene to the ground before they even knew what they were looking for.
The very act of trying to solve the puzzle scattered the pieces to the wind.
The intention was to save a life, but the execution may have ensured the mystery remained permanent.
It's a devastating thought.
That is a haunting reality to leave on. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the historical narratives you encounter, look closely at how the environment shapes human psychology, and remember sometimes the vast open spaces of the world hold their secrets much tighter than any locked room ever could.